Welcome to 26 for 26, a series showcasing some of my favorite cultural touchstones that are celebrating an anniversary in 2026. I'm your host, Nick, and together we'll take a closer look at the movies, music, games, and some other assorted items, and why we should be celebrating their milestone. As a warning, this series may contain swear words, and our topic today does involve discussion of sensitive topics such as addiction, depression, and suicide. Please listen at your own discretion if you can handle those topics. Today's episode, Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, released on February 1st, 1996. Footnote number 1. This sound will indicate a footnote, an aside to the main topic of discussion that provides additional context or information. When the information of the footnote is concluded, a second sound will play, and that will indicate a return to the main topic. Now, Zach, I'm going to hand you a copy of Infinite Jest.
Oh my God.
Footnote number 2. The copy of Infinite Jest that I have handed to Zach is the 2006 anniversary paperback edition. And if you just go ahead and describe to our listeners the book that is in your hands here.
This is a very large book. The print is not very big either.
No, it's a regular.
It is a regular. So the book, I have a book similar in thickness, but it is the print
a graphic novel?
It's not a graphic novel,
Okay.
actually. It does have actual words, but the words are much bigger.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you want to go to that page with the thumbnail, or the little sticky note on there, what is that section there?
You got the notes in Areta.
Yep. And what page number is that on?
983.
Okay, fantastic. So that's the footnotes of the book that starts on page 983.
So 981 pages of good literature, and all of these are notes and footnotes, which is insane.
And then what page does the footnotes end on, Zach?
That is a good question. Let's see here. Did I find it?
There's a lot of stuff there. If it's still numbered, then you're still going.
Really?
Yeah.
Like all this is still footnotes?
Yeah.
No, I thought I saw a new title somewhere.
Nah.
Nope, that's just some more footnotes.
Yep.
You're kidding. You're actually kidding, right? No. Nope, that's some more footnotes.
Uh-huh.
Brother.
So where are we getting to at the end there?
Like everything page numbered is an actual footnote?
Yeah, dog.
Brother. We're looking at 1079 or 1079 for those who are number illiterate.
Sure. So this is one of my favorite books, and I have read it front to back.
Question, how many times? Just the once?
1.5, yeah. It's a real endeavor to actually get through.
As I was flipping through these footnotes, I found it quite interesting. So I see some math stuff and some different diagrams, and there's a lot of different and all sorts of information through here.
Yes, it is an absolutely wildly dense, specific, and mathematical book. So this is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Now, Zach, let me ask you, did you have to read Hamlet in high school?
I don't think that was one I ever had to read. We've discussed it many a times throughout my schooling career, but it's one I don't think I've ever had to read. And of course, my favorite version is the Disney version, which happens to be Lion King, which I've seen many, many times throughout
classic.
my life.
Absolutely.
Not the original.
Okay, very well. That's all very good, because I definitely had to cover Hamlet at some point, but I don't remember like front to back what it is. But when we culturally refer to Hamlet or like make references and whatnot, what are the kind of the key takeaways of Hamlet that like every cartoon and like reference includes?
Depends. One is that it's cursed. It's the cursed play that everyone knows about. It's like the pop culture thing.
You might be thinking of Macbeth.
Oh, I might be thinking of Macbeth. You're right. I'm thinking of Macbeth. But Hamlet, if I remember, there's like the story of this hero that goes along. He has to fight through some family things. Usually his uncle wanting the power, if I remember correctly.
Yep. The uncle's a big thing. The couple of things I was trying to walk you into here was the...
I see the traps. I avoid.
The to be or not to be speech, That's kind of, that is your key Hamlet takeaway. And then normally the Shakespearean dress with someone holding a skull is also like a Hamlet reference.
Yes.
And I bring up Hamlet because that is where the name of the book comes from. When Hamlet is holding the skull, which is not the to be or not to be speech. That's a different scene entirely. But there's a scene where he's out and about with one of his buds. They're going through a graveyard for some reason. I think they're trying to get back into the castle. Footnote number 3. The scene in question is Act 5, Scene 1, in which Hamlet and Horatio encounter a gravedigger in the graveyard. The scene sets serious Hamlet against the frivolous nature of the gravedigger, who cares not for the lives of the bones he buries. And they see that one of these graves is like being dug, and he picks up the skull, and he says, "Alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy." And so that's where the title of the book comes from.
Interesting.
Now, let me ask you this question, Zach. Have you ever had a show or series or movie, a thing that you watch, be so addictive that you had a hard time stopping watching it?
Absolutely. I think that's unfortunately where the term binge even comes from.
Sure. What's, without having to get too personal and too deep dark secrets here, what would you say is like the longest binge you've ever had, like where you physically didn't do anything else but watch that show?
I think the last one I did was for Cobra Kai.
Footnote number 4. Cobra Kai is an American television show that follows the adult lives of characters Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence from the 1984 movie The Karate Kid,
which was COVID time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something I even had a tough time taking myself to bed. 12 o'clock is like, it's fine. I'm going to wake up at 6. I got time. 5 hours is enough.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Very good. Now that is right where we want to be for this discussion, because what if I were to ask you to imagine a movie that was so enthralling that you literally could not pull yourself away from it? It was a thing that if you started watching it, you would literally die watching it.
I don't know if I'd enjoy that as much.
Well, that is the premise of the book, Infinite Jest. Infinite Jest is the name of a movie in this fictional world that is so enthralling that if you put it on and your eyes begin to absorb it, you will no longer blink, you will no longer eat, you will no longer use the restroom until your body fails its capacities and you fall dead in front of the screen.
Not ideal.
Not ideal. Now, if you think about that this is the story here is that this is a home movie, a kind of amateur filmmaker puts this together with no intention of it being dangerous, but it does turn out to be this fatal movie that if you watch it, you will die watching it. And now, imagine, if you will, how dangerous that movie would be, and B, how on earth anyone would find out that's what it does.
Interesting.
Because anyone who watches it dies.
Yeah, I'm curious how you get that information out, unless the only way in my head that this is practical, right, is if you're doing like a test screening or something like that, and be like, the people just will not leave, and I assume that there's someone immune to such power, maybe the director or the editor or whoever who knows a little bit more details about this movie, perhaps.
Yes, potentially. Well, so this is sort of the scenario that we throw ourselves into in the book Infinite Jest here. Now, before we get too deep into the plot here, we do have to go over the author, David Foster Wallace, because a large portion of this book, while the book is fictional and there is no such movie, the settings and events or the character situations are all very much based on David Foster Wallace's actual life and like his lived experiences. So we will discuss the man behind the very thick book here. David Foster Wallace grew up as a child as a competitive junior tennis player, basically like on the junior circuit as like ranked international high-level tennis player. He was raised in an atheist household by two professors, and when he got to college, he studied English and philosophy, and specifically within philosophy, modal logic and mathematics. I don't know if you're familiar with modal logic at all.
Depends what we mean. I've definitely dealt in modals before.
So in the philosophy sense, modal logic is sort of the if-then sort of true statements in philosophical like worldview building, essentially. The notion of if you believe this thing, then these things follow.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Nice, crunchy specialties here. And then you pair that with mathematics, and what a fun guy.
I mean, he's not far off. That's very close to what I did getting my math degree. There's a lot of if-thens through to prove mathematics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why there is, that kind of marriage between mathematic logic and philosophy logic, where there's an overlap in the Venn diagram. That's actually kind of fun to
very thick. Actually.
Yes. So that was his sort of bachelor level English and philosophy. His senior thesis won an award and was immediately published in philosophy journals. Footnote number 5. The senior thesis in philosophy won the Gail Kennedy Memorial Prize and was published posthumously under the title Fate, Time, and Language, an Essay on Free Will. The thesis written for his English degree would go on to be his debut novel, The Broom of the System, published in 1987. And he decided, based on that he was going to focus on becoming a writer, so he went to get an MFA in creative writing at Arizona, and then did a little bit of a trial of grad school at Harvard, but said, nah, never mind. So gets his MFA. That's good enough that he can go on to become an English and creative writing teacher at other colleges. And that's kind of what he starts doing in the early 90s. He starts working on the book Infinite Jest in 1991, submits the manuscript on the novel in 1993. They start doing like little preview publishing snippets of it in 95, and then the book is finally published on February 1st, 1996. After it was published, the very next year, David Foster Wallace was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship grant. Do you know about the MacArthur Fellowship?
I've heard of it before. Don't know what it means or what it does, but grants always good. It means you get money somehow.
Yes. So the MacArthur Fellowship, or MacArthur Fellows, as they're sometimes referred to, is a private fellowship fund that is, they take no applications. They have their own private vetting systems and whatnot for who they're even interested in, and is basically a no strings attached cash money reward. Well, not even reward, but just grant, essentially, stipend to awarded to people who they consider to be of significant achievement in fields of humanity, arts, sciences, etc., etc. Footnote number 6. Also often known as Genius Grants to the displeasure of the MacArthur Fellows, the MacArthur Fellows select 20 to 30 individuals who have shown, quote, extraordinary originality and dedication in their creative pursuits and a marked capacity for self-direction, end quote, and are citizens or residents of the United States. Since its inception in 1981, 1,175 people have been named MacArthur Fellows. A lot of like famous people have gotten these over the years, but it's sort of there's no way to apply for it or anything. You just do stuff, and when you get noticed, sometimes this body of people say, "Here is $500,000.
Yeah,
you've earned it."
Usually, with is it more of an award or a grant? Because usually the difference is if I'm awarded something, I'm being acknowledged for something, whereas a grant means I am getting this money to go forth and do something with it.
And they are very specific that it is a grant, and that they are not the money is not in acknowledgement of any past achievements, but is to celebrate. Yeah, essentially say that we think you will put this to good use. Essentially,
yeah.
So always nice to get $500,000, and then it also turned out that Infinite Jest was one of the most popular books of the '90s. It goes on to be named to the Times top 100 books of the 21st century. Basically, his magnum opus. He knocks it out of the park first try. Footnote number 7. Infinite Jest is not David Foster Wallace's first novel.
Does he write anything after this? Or because I imagine, right, he gets the grant or whatever, and probably if he finishes writing this behemoth monster, also $18 for this. Can't be that today. I almost for sure. This is a whole tree in my hand.
I definitely also did not pay that much because I bought it with my Borders discount.
But I imagine, right, he gets this grant. Does he write anything else after this, or do you just call it good?
I mean, he continues to be a teacher, he does continue to write. The other novels are not as popular, as important. A large body of his work is short stories and essays. And then, like, if you go look at the David Foster Wallace section in the bookstore, several of the books will be just collections of essays.
Little cutie.
Yeah. But he is very well regarded critically, especially in this era in the 90s, because very much like the music and film and media of the time, books were also getting very deep into being ironic and detached and isn't it just easy to be cynical about everything? And it's much better to act like you're cooler than being like invested in things. And David Foster Wallace was sort of one of the only voices of the time who was saying that's not healthy and not a way that we should be at large like this, making our culture, essentially. Is the sort of overall theme that you can kind of pull away from his books. But he is, as you can tell from the many topics of his study, a very intelligent man, several mental health issues to deal with throughout his lifetime, and his style, if you know, I know reading's not your thing, but it is definitely a very unique way of writing that David Foster Wallace has that is, again, very dense, but also comes from a place of like earnestness and, again, a thing that we talked about in other episodes of 321 Presents when we talk about storytelling, the notion that putting more of your personal lived experiences into your work makes it easier for other people to connect to it. And so there's a lot of that sort of personal experience and vulnerability in writing about one's personal experience that gets folded into that. Now, unfortunately, due to the mental health struggles, David Foster Wallace does take his own life in 2008. He does have one manuscript in the works at the time that does get published after his death. Footnote 8. The posthumously published novel The Pale King was one of 3 finalists for the Pulitzer Prize in 2012, but no award was actually given that year. And is nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. I don't believe he did win that year, but so yeah, that is the full career of David Foster Wallace, a very brilliant man, a very troubled man who had a very specific sort of way of looking at life and tried to detail it through his writing. Now, when I say troubled, it is also important to note that several different women came forward after his death to put the record straight that he was an abusive and harassing partner at times. Like all people, he is flawed, but it's very clear in reading the book, too, that this is written by a troubled mind, essentially. Because as you can imagine, a thing this dense, that's a lot of thinking going on in that brain there.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing about him and sort of what I know about the book, I mean, that has to be a lot of thoughts. You don't get a book this thick especially if you're not writing something like a Lord of the Rings, where it's a lot of language and world building without a lot of deep and intentional thought behind it.
So that is the story behind the man who wrote the book. The book itself, I've told you about the movie that kills. The way we get through the book, your favorite, non-sequential storytelling. We jump from perspective to perspective through multiple narrators, through different time eras. We have flashbacks, flash forwards, all sorts of fun stuff like that. As you have noted, a very thick section of footnotes that makes this a very active read, wherein you are intended to kind of, whenever a footnote appears in the text, flip back to those footnotes and find out what the extra detail is, and then go back to following the original train of thought.
I would like the footnotes to be at the footnote, but some of these things are just absolutely
You
massive.
see why they could not all be included in the footer of the page as is traditional, yes.
Yeah, this is just a glossary at this point.
And as you can see in flipping through there, some of the footnotes are like 2 extra lines, and some are multiple pages of explanatory text and extrapolation. Some of it is explaining mathematical theory, some of it is historical context for references, some of it is asides about specific locations and like little personal background character information. And now all of that is definitely a thing that critics did pan it for. Negative criticism. The book is wandering, unedited, thinks too highly of itself, etc., etc. But it is in fact originally designed in a fractal style of like he thought of his narrative in the same way of fractal. What's the exact thing he was going for? It's got a name that you might know. A Sierpinski gasket or Sierpinski triangle. And it's basically the notion of if you have a triangle and you can cut it into is it an isosceles? Equilateral triangle. And you can, draw 3 lines and cut it into 4 triangles and take one of those out and then do that with your other 3 and kind of do that infinitely down.
Yep.
That's the same notion he's going for on his narrative flow here. And that's really the sort of high-end nerd writing that really tickles my fancy.
Yeah, I would say for a common viewer, this is something, if you enjoy like a Christopher Nolan movie, this is your type of deal here.
Absolutely. It's very cinematic in the way that, though, and I think that is a fitting analogy for, you will kind of just get caught up in the layers of it if you can hang along for the ride. But the book begins, we follow Hal Incandenza, who is the youngest son of the owners of the Eton Tennis Academy, which is where he lives and is also training to be a international or high-end tennis player. His father has committed suicide at this point when we begin the story, after having been the creator of Infinite Jest, the movie that kills. No one, again, this is not widespread knowledge that the movie does this, but certain people around the Incandenza family are aware of this, and then as the movie and its handful of small copies get out into the world, mysterious deaths keep happening that get investigated by multiple people out in the world. Eventually, both the ONAN government, because the United States is no longer a thing, it is the Organized North American Nations or Organization of North American Nations. We've annexed Canada and Mexico in this future timeline. Another funny little commentary on the setting of the book. In this future world, the years are bought by corporate sponsors. So the main timeline of the book is set in the year of the Depend adult undergarment.
This reminds me a lot of, I don't know if it's a movie you've ever seen, of Idiocracy a little bit.
Yeah, there are some similar themes going on for sure. And Idiocracy is a classic. But yeah, so there are several different entities. The government is looking for this mysterious killing movie. There is also a terrorist cell of native Quebecois who are looking for the film to try and successfully liberate Quebec, which is funny, but yeah, that is a running through line. So we go through this tennis academy, the kids, the family, the other players at the academy as well. There is also a large portion of the book that happens at a drug and alcohol recovery house, where we meet a whole lot of other characters, some of which have ties to the Incandenzas at the tennis academy. But through them, we are kind of getting at the tennis academy, it's a lot of high-end athletics training and the challenges that come with that. And then also your kind of other school time woes and whatnot. And then there's a complicated family stuff about his mom might be cheating with the owner of like the principal of the school and things like that going on. At the drug and alcohol recovery house is kind of where David Foster Wallace has a lot to say about addiction, the addiction recovery process. We have a couple of protagonists who we follow, one of who is like strictly adherent to the Alcoholics Anonymous kind of lifestyle, to that, like to a degree where that causes issues for him, to all the way across the other side of the gamut of addict behavior, of the completely falling apart, losing their lives in front of you type of thing. And then it's also got this overarching message about a world where a screen-based media kills you and what that says.
Can't imagine that happening anywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, that is a rough approximation. I won't go into I won't spoil the ending and let everyone get there on their own time, because I do think for as intimidating of a book as it is, Infinite Jest is worth trying to get through, because I think it is a quality piece of fiction. I was entertained throughout. It does maybe, if it's hard to hold multiple timelines and whatnot, you might need a notebook or something. There are also several guides out there now to help follow along. The book is so much based in our real world that there is in fact a website called Infinite Atlas that will let you, is an interactive map, basically a Google Maps page with all the pins for basically every location that gets mentioned in the book, so that you can actually like say, oh, that's there, and you can see that like, oh, the coffee shop is 3 blocks down from the school or whatever, and then zoom out, and then here's the oldest brother in the family is a punter for Arizona State, something like that. There's a fun interlude where we go over into a college football realm. And it's this thing where, for as much jumping around as it does between point of view and time and whatnot, knowing that it all contributes to the same narrative, it's a little bit of the sort of discovery of like an RPG or like a Dungeons and Dragons campaign where you're like, I just got a whole lot of new information that I don't know what to do with, but there's a reason I was given it.
Yeah, and for those who may not have the reading capacity like myself, there is some audio version books out there, or audio versions that you can get as well, so you can get through the book and just listen. And
now that is because I am curious how they handle the footnotes.
Don't know.
Because
you just gotta hope and pray.
I was just about to say that part of the other appeal of this is that this is hard reading. Like, this is high level, difficult level reading, because without, like, I don't know, unless the audio is kicking in with the footnote at the appropriate time and like telling you that it's the footnote, it's very hard to get the same experience. Footnote number 9. This is how I imagine the audiobooks are handling the footnotes. Let me know if they're doing something different.
Yeah, very similar to a movie or a book, but it is an option out there if you prefer, and maybe potentially no footnotes there, but I don't want to share quite yet.
I mean, if the footnotes are completely absent, you're not getting the full book.
Fair enough.
You are missing about 200 pages of the content.
No, that's fine. Or you're a really smart person. Maybe you don't need the footnotes.
I would be very surprised if any person had all of the intrinsic. David Foster Wallace didn't even have all the knowledge before he put it all together. But yes, that is an abbreviated recap of Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. Now, the the lasting sort of impact, why is it being discussed 30 years later? Again, it's an enormous tome. Not many books of this size get made ever, but it is also of a quality, and it is a dense little nugget of puzzle and discovery to pick through that I do think it is worth the adventure going through. Very, very big bragging rights that you can say if you make it through this monster. Be like, you want to talk about reading? I've done some of the hardest reading out there, yo.
Yeah, I mean, like you talked about, you don't see many books like this where you're not building a world and are just writing out a straight story. There's no part one, part two to this guy. It's just a complete start to finish novel. The other thing is, it's interesting because this book was, like you said, made 30 years ago, how relatable or maybe more relatable it is in today's world.
Yes, some prescient calls for what the future was going to look like based on the info from the early 90s there. It's a big boy, but it's worth a look. I don't think anyone will ever make a movie of it. Although, so there is a chapter in the book about a game, basically a war game that the kids at the tennis academy invent that involves basically being able to calculate your lobs to do tactical nuclear strikes on your opponent's side of the tennis court, essentially. And there's like a whole... it's one of the big long footnotes is describing the rules and premise of the game, because in the like while you're reading, they're just like, and they were playing the game Eschaton or something, and then there's just like footnote 20 or something, and then you go back to footnote 20, and it's like, the game of Eschaton is played thusly. So it's a full rules breakdown. But the Decemberists did a music video where they reenact that chapter essentially, which is kind of that's about as close as you're going to get, is little snippets and scenes maybe pulled out, because otherwise you would make a piece of media that kills the people who watch it, and that would be defeating the point.
Not wrong there. Well, while we are here discussing this, like you said, this is a 30-year anniversary. It does seem important today. I assume this book is still widely regarded, especially for those readers who like to go on to hard mode. Nonetheless, what would you say has made this book important, even in today's standard?
So, despite the, it's not just it's a big, dense, hard book to read. It is a tale from the perspective of a young man. We all know how formative the sort of teenage years are in everyone's life, and it's a look at how a young man is affected by his father, his mother, his siblings, his classmates, how things completely unrelated to him affect his life without his knowledge. Just like the width and breadth that this book takes you on, I think, again, circling back to the way that David Foster Wallace had this intention of writing, with the notion of it's not healthy to be ironic and detached and cynical about things, that the true sort of ideal outcomes in life are to have rich experiences that you are invested and present in, and to have actual honest connection with people in those moments, and that those are higher values to ascribe to than academic excellence or athletic performance or any number of other of the circumstances, where we see a lot of people go through journeys where they are put in through some real wild, tough times, and the things that they find to make it through are the things that they love about their life. And that is, I think, why it is, as I've said before when we discussed endings on the last 321 Presents, footnote number 10, see 321 Presents, episode 15, There is Still More to Do. You feel like it was worth taking the journey.
Fair enough. And like we talked about, or like you said, 26 for 26 is a little bit of homage to all these things that have these anniversaries, but it's also a little bit of a step through your life. Why include this in the 2026 of the 26? What does it mean to you, and what changed about the way potentially you view the world after taking on this behemoth of a book?
So this is a very I fancy myself, or at least when I did more so than I do nowadays. I will admit I do not read printed book very often anymore. But in my late teens, early 20s, when I first was working at the bookstore and finding out about other authors essentially outside of high school English class, a coworker of mine was like, here's this collection. He's like, here's this book. I think you'll like it. Because we'd made after a few months of working together, knowing each other's sense of humor, or whatever, he's like, I think you'll like this book. And I did, and it was one of the essay collections from David Foster Wallace. Footnote 11. The essay collection in question was A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, published in 1997. And it had in the thing, if you like this, find other stories from David Foster. And I went over to the shelf. There's Infinite Jest, all 3 inches thick of it. And I'm like, oh boy, okay, wow. So I didn't even know about the notoriety of it or the importance of it in the 90s or everything like that. But it was obviously just cracking open, you're like, I'm in for a long haul on this one. And in that, it was sort of a reaffirmation of oh no, I do I wasn't just good at reading through school or whatever. I actually do really enjoy this and am having a good time with it. I was in the middle of my first read through of it. I was the guy in art school pulling Infinite Jest out and reading it during break time, and that's a very specific look that maybe only people from art school and artsy fartsy things be like, oh, you were that guy. I was that guy in college. And I was in the middle of reading it when I first met my partner, Leon. So I also have that sort of memory baked into it as well. So I will never forget my time with Infinite Jest, even though I did have to Wikipedia some of the plot events.
Yeah, like I said, this is a behemoth of a book, and you've read probably many before it and many after it. It's tough to remember all the story, especially with all the footnotes attached to it.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the thing that makes it so difficult to keep going through here. Okay, I gotta have both hands free because I'm flipping across the whole big chunk of here pretty often, so that's fun. It's an all-timer to me. I do think it is worth, even if you don't get through it. You can, like I said, go Wikipedia if you want to know just the plot A to B. How we get there and what happens and whatnot. But I do think it's just a good journey to go on through these characters' adventures here. Footnote number 12. In reviewing my statements, I would be remiss to leave this episode without expressing the immediate sense of recognition I felt when reading Infinite Jest and David Foster Wallace in general for the first time. His style and tone are so similar to my own inner monologue and writing voice, which is that of being overly wordy, parenthetical, and tangential with too many clauses, one after the other. The sort of writing that comes from a brain trying to say a lot all at once and barely holding on to the original thread. But here was someone who had seemingly harnessed that brain into producing stories that other people read and were moved by, who was utilizing this voice that was very familiar to me to try and show people pitfalls to avoid and the lessons earned from mistakes made. This ethos and worldview can be best summarized by David Foster Wallace's perhaps most famous piece of writing, a commencement speech given at Kenyon University in 2005 that would later be published with other writings as This is Water. I highly recommend reading or listening to the full speech, which, as of publication of this episode, is available online in its entirety for free. The speech is premised with the didactic joke, subfootnote 1, didactic, from the Greek didactikos, meaning pertaining to instruction, in art and literature refers to the conceptual approach of an urgent need to explain. So this didactic joke is a joke which is trying to explain a point. Two young fish are swimming along when they happen to pass an older fish swimming the other way. He nods at them and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" The two fish swim on for a little bit before one turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" Without quoting the entire speech here, it's a call to pay attention to what you pay attention to avoid the temptation to operate on your default settings that make self-centeredness the way you go through life, to consider the shared humanity that we are experiencing, and allow for the notion that the folks around you are dealing with equally complex lives with possibly much more on their plates than you have. An admittance that this is a difficult task, and David Foster Wallace himself says he fails at often. And a reminder that we are the ones who determine our own reality, so it behooves us to be mindful of what sort of reality we're making around us. It's less of a piece of advice or passing of wisdom as much as it is a heads up given from the point of view of someone who's tread the path ahead and come back to say, here's what you should watch out for out there. And it's a mindset that I do my best to keep in mind as well, and I would say has definitely led to less stress and frustration out of the aspects of my life which I have control over. And that's my great takeaway from Infinite Jest and David Foster Wallace's writing. A reminder that while we live in a chaotic world that tosses us all around, you can realize moments of joy and true happiness if you're willing to open your heart and let compassion guide your journey through life. Yeah, I'm trying to look up here what my next 26 for 26 episode is. So, yes, we've covered. This is February 1st, Infinite Jest, the 30th release. Our next one is going to be February 14th. And we're going to cover, this is going to be a little bit of a multiple one here. But the classic monster movies, your Dracula, your Frankenstein, your Wolfmans. Coming up also in February, we have The Legend of Zelda on February 21st. And then February 27th, which I think will also be a Pokemon Presents Day. It's Pokemon 30th anniversary. So that's going to be an early one on the 26 for 26 docket. But like I said, that's only 4 of the remaining 22 for the rest of the year.
Good number to have.
Absolutely. But yeah, this is my little project for the year. And we're going to have a fun time going through some memorable bits of media. And I've got a few curveballs as well. If you made it this far through episode 1, I'll go ahead and tell you, we're also celebrating this year the 150th anniversary of the state of Colorado.
Yay, the Centennial State.
And 5 months before that, so this one actually be this will be right after February, the very first telephone call.
That's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah, the state of Colorado, younger than telephone calls. Footnote 13, a proper outro. Thank you to my guest and executive producer of the show, Zach. If this is your first episode of a 321 Productions podcast and you want to hear more of me and Zach, join us for our weekly chat podcast, 321 Presents, or catch all of our content at our website, 321pods.com. I hope you found this episode entertaining and informative and maybe also a little inspiring. If you did, leave a comment to let me know what you got out of Infinite Jest. That has been this episode of 26 for 26. Thanks for coming along.